Hello and welcome to Piginhatwoodcrafts. Today I'm going to talk you through how I made this multi-layered male torso statue using my xTool S1 40-watt laser. You can see here it's made up of multiple layers. This model takes 70 layers and I finished it in metallic chrome paint. So let's get started. So for those of you that aren't aware, I did a previous video using my xTool F1 and S1 lasers to create a collage out of black metal business cards. If you're interested in learning how to do that, check out that video. So the software that we use is Slicer for Fusion 360. But before I get into that, I have to give a big shout out to Kobe Schmidt over at Geeks-At-Large, whose help was invaluable in introducing me first of all to Autodesk Slicer 123 Make, and then subsequently onto Slicer Fusion 360. If I hadn't spoken to Kobe and had his advice, I'm not too sure I'd even got this far as to making a tutorial. So definitely worth going over to Geeks-At-Large and seeing what goodies you can buy there. Okay, so don't be put off by the fact that it's saying here that this technology is deprecated. The software still runs on, well, it certainly runs for me as of June 2024. You can download whichever version you want, Mac or Windows. So when you've downloaded your version and you've got it installed, come back and we'll get started. Okay, so presuming you've now downloaded your Slicer for Fusion 360 and you've installed it, the next thing you'll need a model. So if you head over to GGTrader, I'll put the links in the description, and once you're there you can then search for any kind of model you want, be it a male torso, horse's head, anything. And I chose this model because I quite like it. I've got a female torso, so I thought I'd have a male one to match. Again, I shall give a shout out to Legend Expert, who's the author of this model, because although it says it's a royalty-free license, when you buy these models, you do need to check the details of the license. And just to make sure, because my intention was that I was going to create this model that I would then sell as a pattern on Etsy, I contacted Legend Expert for his permission, stating that I wouldn't be sharing his actual digital model, only 2D flat SVG files, and he graciously accepted. So that's a big up for Legend Expert, and I would thoroughly recommend you browse through his library of models. Okay, so this is the model I'm going to be using for this tutorial, and we'll get started. One other thing is, before we get started, is my laptop has an Ultra 4K screen, and so when I run Fusion 360, it is really, really small. So what I have to do is I have to adjust my settings to accommodate it. So I shall come back in a minute and we'll carry on. Okay, so I've got my screen resolution changed and I've opened up Slicer. You can still see it's still very small, but it's usable. So the first thing we want to do is we want to import our model. So I've already navigated to where I've saved my model to that I downloaded from GGTrader. So the first thing you need to be aware of is the up axis of your model. It defaults to Y, so because we're going to be slicing the model, if you have the axis set to Y, it means that the slices will go from head to toe. If you change it to the Z axis, that means that if you then slice the model, it will then go from front to back. But for our purposes, and for the way I like to do the models, I want to use the X axis, so it will go left to right or right to left, whichever you prefer. And I'll select my model and click open. Now, depending on the size of the model, it may take a while for it to load. So in a moment, you'll see here's a bit of a lag, and there you go. You've got this importing dialog come up. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video and come back when it's loaded. I'll just take a moment to point you in the direction of my Etsy store, which is Piginhatwoodcrafts. And you can see there all the items that's currently listed that I've designed, and feel free to browse, and if you're interested, buy a pattern and see how you get on with it. Okay, so the model is now loaded. I won't go into too much details about these controls on the right of the screen. You can explore them yourself in your own time. But basically you can click on there, the top one, and it allows you to move the model around. So there's various settings here that you can select and navigate around your model. So to start off with, we want to set our manufacturer settings. So we'll click that little toggle cogwheel there, and down the bottom you'll see you've got various fields to fill in. So I'm using millimeters, so I'll choose millimeters. The length is going to be the height of the model, so I want that to be 270. So that's going to be 27 centimeters. The width, I've found that if you have it set too small, what happens is when Slicer creates all the individual slices, you might get a red line, a red slice appearing, where it's saying it's not going to fit onto the material that you've set. So with trial and error, I've just found out that if I make it a nice high value, such as 300, I will get all the pieces fitting okay, and there won't be any errors. And of course my material is going to be 3 millimeters. Okay, so now we want to change the actual model itself. So we select again millimeters, and because I changed the axis, the up axis of the model to be Y, so instead of changing height or length, I want to change the width, because that's what I've set to be the up axis, and ensure that you've got uniform scale checked, and then just press enter. And after a few moments you'll see that the model will scale up. If you're in doubt of which one of the values of your model determines the up axis, what you can do is you can untoggle this uniform scale and then change one value at a time, height, width or length, and then you'll see that one. So if you say, for example, do height, just that one axis would change. You'd get a stretched model, but at least you could identify which axis belongs to which. Okay, so we've now got our model set to the size we want, and we want to select a construction technique. You click on this download, the toggle button, drop down list rather, and you can see there's various options of how you wish to slice this model, and we're going for stacked slices. So you just select that, and there you have it. It's very quick. You can see there we've now got a nicely sliced model. Okay, and on the right hand side you can see that it's taking 19 sheets and 97 parts. As I said before, is if the model wouldn't fit the material, the manufacturing settings, you'd get, say, one of these slices would be highlighted in red, and over here the sheet that it pertained to, it would be in red, and it would be telling you that it's not going to fit the page. So basically that's something that you're going to have to play around with. Okay, so we've got our slices. What I want to do is I wish to have dowels going through so I can make sure that on assembly everything lines up correctly. You may have, so for example, say you've bought 3mm dowel, you'd set that to 3 millimeters and you'd leave it at round, and Slicer will put those in the right place set to 3 millimeters. But because I'm making my own guide rails, I'll set that to 2.9 millimeters, and I want them to be square. So up there, and now I want to do automatic dowels, and when I click that, Slicer will now automatically change the model. If I show you there, so you can see now, and it's showing you that it's going to use 4 dowels to go through to help you guide all the pieces into the right place. Okay, and then if we click on any one of these sheets on the right hand side, go there, so you can see that it numbers the sheets for you, And then you can see that for our purposes, we've got these square dowel holes. Okay, so that's good. So the next step is you want to review the assembly steps. And so you can see here, down at the bottom of the screen, it defaults to cardboard. But I find that zigzag a bit confusing. And because I'm using plywood, well, I'll choose plywood, which makes it a lot easier to see. Bottom right, you can see now that there's 72 parts, and you've got almost like a little play button. So if you grab that toggle, you can see there, as you drag it to the left and right, you can see each step as it goes. And if you orientate the model, say that way a bit, you get a better view. And you can do one at a time, and you can go back. And as you're doing it, it tells you which part you're on, and it highlights the sheet that it pertains to. So in the early days, I would come back referring to this just to make sure I was doing things right. But now I'm happy. I'm okay doing it. So once I've done the slicing and I've got the plans, I close Slicer and job done. So the last step is we want to get the plans. So you've got your get plans here. You can see all your sheets are laid out. At the bottom of the screen, you've got your file type that you're going to export it to. In the early days, I was choosing PDF, but I had a lot of issues with that. And then I found that actually DXF is much more efficient. Leave it at millimeters and export to my computer. And I shall, as you can see, I've already done it once there, male torso. If I just do a new one, just so we don't confuse things, let's just call it statue, just so you can see, and do save. So that is now exported to the desktop. I'll get rid of those just to avoid confusion. Okay, so Slicer has exported all those pages into this zip file, and if I extract them all, you'll see here, and now we have one page, a DXF file, and there's 19 in total. And so that's job done with Slicer 360. Get rid of that email. I'll close that. And what I'm going to do now is I'll change my resolution back so that it's working correctly for Lightburn. Catch you in a minute. Okay, so I have Lightburn open. I choose to use Lightburn to do all my design work. And previously, when I had my earlier xTool lasers, it was all I used. But now that I've got the xTool S1 and an F1, I've chosen to use their proprietary software, which is Creative Space, to do all the actual processing of the files to the lasers. But I still use Lightburn for doing all my editing work. So, with that said, I have Lightburn open, and I would need to import the DXF files. Now, although you could select them all and highlight them all and bring them in one go, which I'll show you now, Lightburn whacks them all into a big messy pile, and because they're not grouped at the moment, you'll see when it's finished, it's virtually impossible to do anything with them when it's finished. Come on. There. So now you can see this, you've got this big mess, and if you try to select any one of them, it will basically just bring out bits of them, so you're losing parts. Okay, so with that said, what I do is I choose to import one page at a time, starting with 0. Makes life a lot easier. So you can see there now, so we've got the first page imported. And if I just zoom in a little bit more, one thing I've noticed, so if I just click on the square, which is the dowel, you remember that I set it in Slicer to be 2.9, but for some reason, when it comes out of Slicer, it's increased into 3.154. I don't know why it does that, but it doesn't really bother me, because all I do is I just create my guide rails to that size and away I go. So what I'll do now is, first of all, is if I hold down the left mouse button and then drag from the bottom right up to top left, so it selects everything, and then you come up to the toolbar at the top And if you hover your mouse over, you see group selection. So if I click that, that means now that all those components are locked together, so you can move them around in one go. So I'll get those out of the way there. I'll zoom out a bit. Okay, so what I'll do is I shall now continue to import the other pages, and I'll come back when that's done. Okay, so I've paused the actual importing because basically I think it'd serve no purpose, because once you've imported one, you know how to import them all. So this is my personal preference. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I like to basically choose one of the pages and move it out of the way. And then I will ungroup it by clicking the single person avatar at the top there on the toolbar. And I'll get rid of this square. So I'll just click on it and then press the delete button. Now, I always use red to cut and blue to score or engrave. So I would select the item, which is sheet number or part number 38. And down the bottom here, I'll then click on 2. So now that's now on the red layer, which you can see over here on the top right. And you can probably leave the numbering as it is, but you'd obviously want to change it to a different layer because you don't want it to be on a layer that's going to get cut. So I'll just set that to blue. A lot of the time, what I do for myself is I actually delete the numbers and I actually redo them myself in a much smaller, just maybe I'm just silly that way, but that's what I do. Okay, and then I can make that a bit smaller. Okay, so that's that. So I'll get rid of, I'll drag from the bottom left to select the 38 and just delete it, so that's got out of the way. And then for the squares, I will shift click on each one in turn, and they are currently on the blue layer. Well, I'll select those to be the black layer. And the reason I do that, which I'll show you in a second, when I now highlight the whole thing and group them. So what will happen now is when I process this in XES, I have my layers, which I'll show you in a moment. I have my layers set so that it will do the scoring first. So on the sheet of plywood, it will do all the engraving first. Then it will do the inner cuts, which are the black. And then it will do the final outer cut, which is in red. So when I've done all of that, I then group them into pages of A3 size, which I can show you I have here if I just do open recent. Where are we? There. I'll say no to that because I don't want to borrow from that. So there you go. So now this is the actual file that I've put on my Etsy page, and what I've done is I've grouped each blocks into A3 sizes, which matches the sheets that I'll put into my X1 laser. So when I've done that, I then basically, if you're not using XES and you're using Lightburn, you're now ready to process it, and you can jump forward to the part of the video where I'm doing the assembling. If you're using XES, carry on watching. Okay, so for the XES users, what I'll do is I'll bottom right click, left click and drag from bottom right up to top left to highlight everything. And then I'll go up to File and Export. And I'll call this one Male Torso 2 because I've already got the other one there, so just to show you how it works. And so that's done, so we can dispose of Lightburn. And then if I come into XES, you can see there, and then I'll click on Image, and I shall navigate to my folder. And there's Male Torso 2 that we've just exported from Lightburn. I'll select that. And XES will import them. And there you'll see now they're in there and they're all ready to be processed. What you'll see here is these are the dowels that I created. So these will be like the guide rods, and they are set to 3.22 because this was one I did previously. Okay, so now what we'll do is, now that we have that all ready to go, I shall now go up to the laser and we'll take it from there. Right, so I have my first sheet all set up ready in XCS. I won't bother going into the settings that I'm using because it depends on what machine you've got. But I have it here. I've got the material all set up ready. So we'll kick that off, put the fan on. And off we go. So I'll come back once this sheet's finished. See you in a bit. So that's the first sheet cut out. What I'll do now is I'll cut out the other remaining sheets and then I'll come back to you. See you in a bit. So here we have all the parts finely cut, ready. And what I'll do is, as I do each sheet, to save time, because when I spray this I don't want any soot reacting with the paint. I don't bother sanding the pieces down, but what I do is I use a lint-free cloth, and as each sheet gets processed I wipe all the edges down, so by the time I get to the last sheet I've got just some small pieces to do, and now I'm ready to assemble it. See you in a bit. Okay, so I'm now down ready to assemble everything. I'd recommend that you do what I do. You can see here that every piece is numbered, and it's very wise to group all the pieces together, especially ones that have multiple pieces, so you're not rummaging around trying to find them. And then assembly will be a smooth process. And there's all the main center blocks, and then these are both the shoulders. Okay, so the next part I'll show you the assembly start. Okay, so although you could start with the shoulders, which have got the holes in them, it would be very awkward working out from very small pieces working into the main body. So what I do is I will pick one of the full-size pieces, and I'm going to start with slice 40 and slice 39. So you can see those there. Yeah. And so standing them like that, the numbers will be working, as you're looking at it, have the numbers working to your right. And then you have your guide rods that will go through, obviously, the holes, and they will line up like so. I'll just quickly shove those in there. So this just makes sure that you've got each slice of the model correctly aligned. Okay, so you can see those are in there. So there's my guide. And when I've done that, what I'll do then is I'll just pull that apart slightly, and I will apply glue, which is the super glue I use, into the numbered face, and then sandwich them together, making sure you don't get any glue on the rails, the guide rails, because that really will hinder you. And then basically once I've got those done, I'll then go to number 38, again making sure the numbers facing the right way, line up the guide rails, and just work my way all the way through until I've completed the right side of the model, and then come back and then repeat the process, working my way through to the left side of the model. So I'll come back when I've finished doing the assembly. So I'm halfway through the project. You can see here, looking pretty good. Sorry about the light, but it will look better once I've got finished and I'll do some spraying. You can see the detail there. Okay, and so now I need to do the other half. Catch you on the next bit. So here's the model finished. Very happy with that. And all I'll do now is I'll take it out to the garage and I'll spray it. And what I use is Plasticoat metallic chrome paint. So I'll go out to the garage and do that, and then I'll see you in a bit. And here's the result. I'm very pleased with that. It's a nice chunky statue. It's come out really good. Nice metallic. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and you can make one just like this. See you on the next one.